Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat Show. My name is CoachEUrban. I'm a certified career strategist and executive coach, and what I do is I help driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks so they can achieve more impact and more income. Today, we're going to be talking about having more impact and overcoming imposter syndrome. In fact, the shocking truth behind what imposter syndrome actually is. What we think of imposter syndrome actually is not maybe what we thought it was. And we're going to be learning from an outstanding guest, a master practitioner, internationally renowned and highly regarded organizational individual systemic coach, which is a word and term for a coach who understands systems. She's also a trainer, facilitator, and motivational speaker with over 20 years experience in assisting high performance individuals and teams break limiting cycles and transform challenges into lasting breakthroughs and peak performance. And we are going to be talking to Judy Wilkins-Smith. Now, I will share with you in all transparency that I've already been talking to Judy quite a bit. And we've been talking about some of the challenges I've experienced throughout my life and have overcome some of them and still working on, as all of us are, working on some of these challenges. And it's amazing the breakthroughs that I've already experienced. So I am very, very excited to have her on the show today. Now, as you hop on the show, if you've never seen me before, my name is CoachEUrban or CoachEUrban. You look more about me at CoachEUrban.com or check out my book, Elevate Your Career for More Impact and Income, right here in the background. You can find that at ElevateYourCareerBook.com or on my website at CoachEUrban.com and navigate to books. If you have not been on the show before, please say your name, say where you're from, or if you have been on the show before, please say your name and say where you're from. I'd love to welcome you to the show today. And if you have any questions at any time, know this is your show and would love to have you participate. So it's not just showing up and hanging out and watching me make funny faces today, but also please participate. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And you have two coaches at your disposal. Please do ask your questions. I'd love to hear from you and welcome you to the show today. And without further ado, I'd also love to welcome Judy Wilkins-Smith to the show. Judy, it's lovely to have you. And we are so excited to learn the truth about imposter syndrome and what it actually is. And most importantly, how we can turn it into something empowering to fuel our growth.
Great. Thank you for having me this morning. I told you I would have a cat. The cat is in the background chewing. Let's hope the cat stays in the background chewing.
It's so funny because when we were talking together via Zoom last week, actually, one of her cats showed up and just so kindly rubbed her cheek against, she's like, oh, don't let her, smooze you at all, because this is her way of getting treats. And everybody's like, oh, whatever they say, it's so cute. But yeah, she's just wanting treats.
Oh, yeah. She likes the attention. She thinks she needs to be there.
Exactly. Great to see you. Paula's tuning in from Kansas City. Great to see you, Paula, again on the show. Gail, always a pleasure to see you from Porter, Texas. And again, if any of you tuning in today have questions as we go along, please pop them in the chat. We're more than happy to answer them. So I have a question for you, Judy.
Go ahead.
I've, of course, looked at your amazing background, and you do have a background in family work. What got you into systemic coaching? What was that catalyst? I'm just curious, I'm just really interested to know, because it's fascinating work. And I'd love to hear more about what was that ignitement?
Yeah. Strange things. It was one of those things where you get thrown into it, whether you felt like it or not. I moved over from South Africa to the US, to Texas. And my father was killed not long after here in Texas. And I started writing books. It was either I'm going to go crazy or let's do something. So I started writing books, and I was doing research, and I needed a particular piece of research. And I found a person who I contacted who said, well, I don't know if I'm interested in your book, but you may contact me. I will see. And I thought, that's very inviting. The long story short, I wound up studying with this person for about 2 or 3 years. learned a lot, and they never gave me any help with the book. So, but the more interesting piece around that was I'd been doing it for a while, and somebody said to me, of course you do this work. And I said, what do you mean, of course you do this work? And they said, well, you come from South Africa. That's where systemic work was born. Bert Hellinger was the originator. He was a priest who went on to go and tame the Zulu nation. And he said instead they tamed him. Now, even more interesting than that is that my background is actually medical. I'm a triple med tech, or was, back in South Africa. And when I left, they gave me a farewell. And this gentleman, who was a chief of one of the Zulu tribes, said, and also chief of surgery, said to me, you may be leaving us now, but you will carry us and represent us in the world. And I went, yeah. And here I am, and I do that every single day. Every person I coach, I go back to that. So yes, it was a bit of a full circle thing. The more I tried to get out of its way, the more it came running after me. It wasn't going anywhere.
It needed you to be a part of that system.
I think probably it may have needed me, but I probably needed it because it gave me the ability to say my roots are in Africa, my wings are in America. So it's a very nice connecting piece.
That is nice.
Yes, I've taught it all over the world because of that.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. I am sorry to hear that your father passed away unexpectedly here. Although that's not a great welcome.
It wasn't, and it's one of those things really that I've learned when you look in hindsight. Every single thing, every event, everything has a place and a need. If that hadn't have happened, I probably would never have gotten to doing what I'm doing. So he also travels with me every day. I mean, he's part of my family system, and they're always behind me. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, yes, I took my career from something dreadful that had happened, because I know one of the things that I've learned is that everything that's dreadful is literally just a grinding door that's setting you up to go through a new portal. That's all.
And that's, I think, very important news for people who are tuning in to this show, because as we go through, the pandemic and everything that we're experiencing, this massive change, this massive shift, and the shift into digital, and people being out of jobs and having to reinvent and pivot, and the scary new places that they have to open up these doors, and this catalyst for people to then understand and have clarity around, what, I've been doing this job or this profession or in this industry and it doesn't serve me, and I've been doing it just because. Now I have a choice, and now we can shed false beliefs and negative things that held us back as a culture. We're trying to find our way, and it's a very tumultuous time, I think, for all of us, to understand that sometimes seemingly at the moment unpleasant circumstance can be a catalyst for something greater.
I love that you said can be, because that choice sits with us, right?
That's right.
We can keep our eyes closed, and we can really be upset, and we can be miserable, and we can say, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. Or you could get put into a circumstance like I was, where I knew that I was at that point, I became the breadwinner solidly for the families. And it was, if you don't do something, you're on the streets. So, I mean, there was no plan B. But if I look at it now, the things it taught me, the fear, of course, is one of the biggest obstacles. But when you sit down and look at it and you can move through it and into what it is that you're going to do and just keep going with it one step at a time, you will get there. And the other piece that's super important is the self-talk. Mm-hmm. I discovered that I had a real potty mouth around myself. It was not good. But learning that self-talk, because you're either going to your truth is either going to be the worst of who you are or the best of who you are, and it's entirely in your hands.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true. Our mindset drives our outcomes. Full stop.
Completely. And even more than that, and this is the piece that you and I have been discussing, it's not just your mindset that drives it. It's the multi-generational mindset, because you don't just inherit physical DNA, You inherit emotional DNA, and this is being shown more and more and more. It pops up in epigenetics. There are numerous studies. So when you think that you're in fear, in anger, you're an imposter, you really want to have a look at who else. Who else in the family had that before me? Where did that start? Yes, self-talk is a huge power. And self-listening is an even bigger one, by the way. Just to be aware.
It's not easy. Active listening is not natural. It's very interesting. When I started way back in the day, when I started learning how to actually listen, because I wasn't good at it, and then coach people through active listening, it takes practice and intentionality, particularly to listen past the pause.
Yes, which is an art, because what do we want to do? We want to fill it. Yes.
I have something to say. Oh, I have an idea. Oh, I can solve that.
Right.
Zip it. And you know, it's amazing. And I know we're getting a little off track, but this is also so important. But what's amazing about intentional listening is that person who is a recipient of your intentional listening, you're receiving, you're hearing them, you're acknowledging them, you're present there for them. You may not have to solve anything, come up with any solutions, or have any great epiphanies, but just by listening, they will think so much greater of you.
And themselves.
Yes.
Which is huge.
It's a positive, empowering cycle versus a negative cycle.
Exactly. So when you talk about that active listening, I think active listening is not just important, it's crucial. When you're really there and they know that people can go all the way into where it is they need to go to and come all the way out again, because finally somebody is saying, I'm here, I'm present, you're present, it's good. And by the way, just to touch into our subject, when you listen actively and you are really there, you will not have a client with imposter syndrome because they know they matter.
That's right. That's absolutely right. By the way, active listening is a critical skill for coaches.
Yes, it's probably really the most. I have to tell you very quickly an active story or listening story. I was teaching people to facilitate systemically. And the girl who was sitting next to me, so I would sit next to them, they'd facilitate. If they got stuck, then they'd sort of tap me on the shoulder. And this person who she got the client from, who did not stop talking. She took a deep breath, and I swear she rambled for about 5 minutes. And you could see this poor coach was sitting there trying to do something. And at the moment that she closed her mouth, this woman said, "He's a terrible man." And then she looked at me and she said, "I just took a side, didn't I?" Yeah. So it really is important to listen past that pause and just sometimes let people ramble. They need to do it.
They need to get all people need to do is just talk. Yes. But I want to say hi to Lori tuning in from Flower Mound. Thank you for tuning in today. Sharon, great to see you from Houston, Texas. Phil, always good to see you from Cyprus. And of course, someone from the UK, Ivana. Hey, great to see you from tuning in from the UK, Ukraine. So that's a long way around the world there.
It's a long way around the world, and it's snowing there. I don't know if Ivana's got snow at the moment, but I know I have a client in London, and they said it was snowing.
I think I have a friend that's going over to Russia, a different part of Russia, but she said it was minus 25.
Oh, no. I get to anything minus below 70, and it's not good.
We're very firmly South Texas people.
Totally.
So, Judy, let's talk about imposter syndrome, because it's, as you shared with me earlier, and I don't want to spoil it for other people, but it's not quite what we think it is. It's not necessarily about you being an imposter and not belonging.
Okay, yes. So imposter syndrome is something that I talk about a lot and teach a lot, because I work with a lot of leaders who come to me and say, somebody is going to find out I'm not the real deal. I'm going to get busted. It's not going to go well. I don't have all the knowledge that they think I have. I'm in dead fear that at some point everything's going to fall apart. And so what I ask them is, do you have all the answers? No. And that's what they don't realize. And I said to them, no, what you don't realize is you don't have imposter syndrome. You have pioneer syndrome. You're simply the one who's willing to go looking for answers that other people are not. And when they realize they've got pioneer syndrome, it opens everything up. Now, all of a sudden, they don't have to have the answers, but they can go and discover them. And this is a large part of this systemic work. If you try to drive a system, it's going to smack you if you don't understand what its dominant characteristics are. But if you understand what is dominant in the system and what's trying to rest and trying to emerge, you can walk with it. And when you do that, it'll start emerging solutions that you could never have conceived of. Mm-hmm. The other thing about a leader who thinks they have imposter syndrome is I always ask them, are you doing your own personal development? Because your team can literally only go as far as you can.
That's very true.
Or it's going to run over you, one of the two. But you want to make sure that you are always doing your work so that they feel safe too. But no, imposter syndrome is very seldom imposter syndrome. It's usually pioneer syndrome. What they're doing is we have rules in a system, and every system has one. If you think of your family system, you know that in my system, I better not talk too loudly. In this system, we're all engineers. In that system, we all do things a certain way. And then you'll have the squeaky wheel, aka the imposter, nope, the pioneer. And they look at this and they go, well, these rules are just not working for me anymore. I just really, they're too limiting for me. And so what they do is they look like a maverick or an outsider, and people say, did you see what they did? When somebody says that, you need to pay attention and say, let's look at what they're doing. Because what they're doing is they're opening up the system and they're adding rules and guidelines. So they're really not stepping out of it, they're stepping ahead of it and pulling the rest of the system into it. So I always say, God bless the imposters who are really pioneers. Because of them, exactly, Ritu, somebody has to do it first. And it may not be pretty, but if somebody does it first, things start to happen. We need those imposters and pioneers. I will also say that in an imposter / pioneer, if you're feeling that, is when your voice is probably one of the most authentic pieces. You're now using your voice because it no longer resonates with what's there, so it has to come from you. So this is the edge or the space at which you find yourself. So imposter syndrome is the most wonderful place to be. And it may have started for you very, very young. You may have had to be too big because of circumstances in the family and get out of order. You may not have belonged because belonging in this way was horrifying for you. So you had to do something different. You may have found that you had so much to give that your balance of give and receive was slightly off. Or you may have to learn to receive, because that is the one thing that imposters or pioneers have to learn to do. If I cannot receive knowledge from what is known, I've got to go out there and find knowledge somewhere else. So they have to learn to be very open to possibilities. So your pioneering person who thinks they're an imposter is simply somebody who's at the leading edge of their game.
And particularly when it comes to a family system, if no one in your family has, let's just say, I don't know, gotten a college degree, or maybe you're the first one in your family to be in corporate America, or maybe the first one in your family to be in a management role, or maybe you're the first person, maybe all of your family are farmers and you're an engineer, or maybe all of your family are accountants and you're an artist. So then you feel misaligned with the system that was established. Perhaps.
Exactly. And the system is very beautifully setting you up, because systems are elegant, dynamic, growing organisms. And when things are too status quo, they need somebody to start moving things in a direction. So what happens is you come along and you're not satisfied, you don't fit in, You want more. Heaven forbid you should want more, because everybody thinks that's a sin, and which I will speak about. You want to do things differently. This is the system saying, my basic need is to survive. My highest ideal is to thrive. You're the one who can make it happen. Move. So it starts to agitate you and make you really uncomfortable in the system. And just back to the wanting is a sin. Many, if not most, imposter pioneers want more than most of us. They have great appetite. And people will look at them and say, you're greedy. Why do you always want so much? Do you have to? No, they're expressing appetite for life. And appetite for life says, I must want in order to go there.
That's
and
true.
When I go there, I want more. So I always say to people, please want as much as you can. And when those wants are filled, start wanting again. Wants grow the world.
And I'm interested in knowing, those people who are tuning in, our participants, thank you for joining us today. Which one of you feel like you suffer from imposter syndrome? And now we know, as it for a different term, more than likely it's pioneer syndrome. And do you feel where is that? Do you feel that, if you feel comfortable sharing that, where do you feel that in your life? Is it something you're trying on something new? Or do you feel agitated in the space you're in? Because I know a lot of clients who come to me, what I call that mid-career pause, when they wake up and go, oh, this doesn't fit me anymore. It's like a coat that's too small. And I want to break free. I want to do something different. This is not, this pattern that's been established for me is not serving me. And I feel agitated and I want out. So share with me, for those of you tuning in, what resonates with you and what questions do you have? Because I'd love to answer them. And for you, Judy, when you feel that agitation, what are those questions you might want to be asking yourself?
Two sets of questions. So the first set is, what is really agitating, annoying, making me angry, sad, mad, whatever it is? Name it. Write them down. Make sure that you can look at them, and then name how you express them. I hate this. I'm not doing that. I never will. This frustrates. Express it, because now you've got the pattern that's telling you, I've outlived my usefulness. I came from somewhere in the system, but I'm no longer relevant. You've just named it. And then the other set of questions is, so what do I really want to be? Where do I really want to be? How do I want to feel? How much bigger do I want to be? What does that look like for me? How would I like it to sound?
Right. What does it feel like? What does that look like? What is that vision? Can you visualize
it? Yeah, absolutely.
That's I will just share with you quickly. I've been working on doing some active, intentional, emotional alignment with goal setting and through visualization. And because neuroscience and a host of other research I won't bore you with has proven that this particular pattern by which you go through, which I'll be sharing in the months to come, by the way, heads up, that's coming out there. I'll be sharing with what I've been working on and how it's been working. But it's just amazing once you start doing that visualization in alignment with the emotion you want to feel, not the emotion you don't.
Right.
And you want to feel, along with that visualization, that goal of where you want to be, that helps you move, I guess, give a place for that. So you're giving a place for that in your system. Am I saying that right, Judy?
You're saying it beautifully. What we talk about is where you are now is where the weight is. It's where you're anchored. You've got to build a big enough want over here to move you from here to here. And that's what you're talking about. And so what that looks like is one new thought, one new feeling, one new action. But new thought that you can believe. So can you sell it to yourself and can you buy it? And then emotion and then the action. And for me, it's very clear when you do systemic work. If the heart opens, the brain switches on. If the brain switches on, it turns the gut from survival into sensing. So when you've got heart, head, brain, at least heart, brain, gut in alignment, that's when you go into that state of coherence. That's when you can feel it. You can see it happening. It is there. And yes, you will pull yourself there, because what you've just done is you've pulled yourself beyond the conscience of the system. Beyond all the old rules and regulation, you've gone, that doesn't apply to me. Here's where I'm going. And when you invest in that thoroughly, you will move there.
So I've got a question for you too, if you don't mind. I would like to share that. She starts off with, she goes, because I don't have a formal degree, I feel like an MBA, for example, I feel like an imposter, quote unquote imposter, when I talk business talk. And she goes on to say, or maybe perhaps because I have a Lean Six Sigma black belt, hi, fellow Lean Six Sigma black belt, I should only talk about project management. Like that's the only thing you're qualified to talk about, which is what others in my organization have seen me doing in the past, and that quote unquote defines her. So she feels like she's stepping outside that definition.
I love it. So here's what you do have. You said you don't have the formal degrees. I have done a number of experiments where I asked people to tell me all the informal pieces that they have. And if you lay them end to end, you'll frequently find that equals a degree anyway. So that's just something to be aware of. The other piece is this. If they know you as an expert in, okay, so you have one piece of expertise. What is the best part of your expertise in that, and begin to develop that? And guess what? Nobody defines who's an expert or not. People tell me all the time I am, and I go, really? It's when you can taste it in your mouth and feel it in your body and express it in your words, and you own it. And you own it the way that only you can own it. You are an expert on the work that you do, nobody else is. So you don't ever want to let something like a piece of paper get you down. In fact, if I'd have done that, I'd never have stepped into the work that I did, because the work that I do is known to be in the groundbreaking field. So you've really got to be into it. You've got to know what you're doing, and you've got to own it. So for your lady, I would say own it.
Absolutely. Lean Six Sigma black belt project management. You are actually highly qualified to talk about business talk, because that's what you do.
and you know that's what happened for me. Was I took the systemic piece that I was an expert in, and then was invited to move into corporate America more and more, which is where I spend a lot of my time. I work with the top CEOs, CFOs. And I will tell you that I definitely had imposter syndrome for at least the first couple, until I realized they were coming to me for what I knew, not what they expected me to be. So be aware of that. Our lovely Six Sigma person, they're coming to you because of what you have. All you've got to do is keep building, because they'll go, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. Own it and grow it.
Absolutely. Or take the risk too. I know that at one point in my career, I realized that I was only known for this little box that I was in, what I did for my role, and all these other expertise and knowledges that I could bring to the company as value, but they didn't know it. So I had to take a risk. I actually applied for a role that I knew I wouldn't get, because I wanted that exposure to those key decision makers who I could then express, this is what you know me for, but I have all of this as well. And this is what I can bring to the company. This is that value I can add. And they actually created a position for me.
Yes. And once you start speaking, and you know this, Erin, you know more than you think you know. Once you start speaking, that language will come. What you need is there. I've also, in systemic work, I'm lucky. I have a particular tool called a dimensional mapping tool. So I use dimensional mapping to explore issues, which means I either use pieces of paper with names and arrows and things on it, and I do systemic questioning, or I use live representatives. So if people ask me questions, 90% of the time I have no idea what the answer is. But what I do know is if we set it up and we start to ask the questions, they're going to find the answer they need. It's not my job. They will find it because we're present together, because I could do the coaching piece, and now they're literally engaging multiple senses. They're using their eyes, they're using their ears. We're standing in it. We're actually moving the pieces around. So it's really not that you have to know, it's that you have to be willing. It's back to that imposter piece. If you have somebody who asks you a question you don't know, your answer is, I don't know, let's go and explore.
That's right. Let's find out. It'll be fun.
Yep.
Gail has a question that Oh, I love this, Gail. Thank you. It's a big question here. So she goes, I feel this when I apply for jobs online that she's not 100% matched for. And what she hears in her head is, you are not good enough for this job. I feel like I'm an imposter. So Gail, here's my top tip for you. Stop applying for jobs that you're 100% matched for, number one, because you're not giving yourself enough room to grow. When a decision maker looks at that, check the box, check the box, check the box, they're going to say, well, she's going to be bored and leave in 3 to 4 months, and attrition costs money. So please apply for jobs that allow you room for growth. Because if you work for a good leader, that person will see that that room for growth is a positive thing. You want a little bit of tension there. If you check all the boxes, if they're a good leader, they will recognize that and also recognize that you'll be quickly bored. So, she asked, does a type A overachiever mentality have anything to do with that? Part of it is fear too, honestly, Gail. What I'm seeing right now, particularly, and it happens, pre-pandemic, and it will happen post-pandemic. Those people who want to be 100% job match, it's because they want the guarantee. They feel like if I'm 100% job match, I'm guaranteed to get the job. Well, actuality, that's not necessarily the case. If you are 100% job match, you might be passed over for the job because they'll be concerned that you might leave. So consider giving yourself some room for growth, and know that that's, a good thing.
Yeah. In systemic terms, we would say she's lowballing it. She's undershooting. Right. You are not applying for jobs that actually are a match for you. This is where people would say you're overqualified for the job. Mm-hmm. What you want is exactly what Erin said. And in fact, if you're mindful and you look for the position, what you look at is, what do I have? Where can I grow? And you go into your interview saying, here's what I have. Here's where I can grow. This is what I see. Now you've given them potential. Now they know they're not just going to get the 9 to 5. They're going to get some of the passion as well. Other than that, you're going to be a nice flower for a while until the flower wilts. You don't want that. So I'm all the way there with Erin. You're lowballing it. Go for higher positions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Give yourself that room for growth. So many people want to be 100% match, and you're actually not doing yourself a service at all. And good leaders will spot that, and they also might not give you the opportunity because they're afraid you'll leave. They want to grow people. And if you can, just like Judy said, speak to that where you want to go, in your resume, on your LinkedIn. I'm excited about it. I'm passionate about it. I love doing this. Talk to that. What is it that excites you? What do you want to do? What value can you bring? Then not only are you igniting that ROI, hey, that's a light bulb for decision makers. They want to see that ROI, but also you're speaking into that place where you want to go and naming it.
And you're not an imposter if you're doing that. You're literally a pioneer and beyond. You're willing to move into the growing space. You're indicating that they won't have somebody who's just stuck. They want to see your appetite for life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. They do. They absolutely do. And you can interview so much more powerfully, show up in that space with so much brighter, you shine so much brighter in that space. Gail's like, I've never thought about the room for growth concept. Yay! I'm glad we got a breakthrough here today. Sharon shares, she goes, I've just completed my MBA and I still don't feel confident. I think most people are on the same boat of not feeling confident.
Yes. Can I speak to that, please? That's called a meta pattern of not confidence, because we come from a culture that says we should think we're good, but we don't think we're good, and you're probably not good enough, and you really should be humble. So please don't be confident. Don't do that. Don't do that. That meta pattern is actually asking you to go, I can breathe into this. I may not have this skill set, but I'm going to go there. And in fact, just to tack on to what we said earlier, when you say to somebody, here's what I bring, here's where I want to go, you can also say to them, when I do this, here's how things could change. This is how it will change me. This is how I see it might change the company. Now you're really giving them a basket of toys to play with.
Absolutely.
So, you don't want to give them just your capabilities. You want to give capability and potential.
Mm-hmm. And just to tag on something really quickly, women historically have been judged by their performance, not their potential. So for women, it's so much more important even than anybody, but particularly women, to talk about your potential.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
otherwise they think you're not hungry or ambitious. They do think that. So if you want to say to them this and then this and then this, and tell them a little bit about where you would like to go. So that they know this is somebody who's also in it for the long haul. They would like to be here and grow with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you say, I think most people are in the same boat of not feeling confident. Ask yourself how often is that "I don't feel confident" shown up in your language historically? Who else has said that in your family? Where does that come from? And really understanding where that comes from helps you
who does it belong to, right? Yeah.
Does it belong to you, or is it, and as I've learned from Judy and the work we've done together, is that something that's a part of your family system, or is it part of the cultural system? Because I know we can have a great conversation, Judy. We start talking about the patterns in our culture right now and what's going on. I mean, it's really, really, I'm just so excited. And I know there's a lot of, growing pains we're going through right now, and very uncomfortable, but I'm also really excited to see that a lot of positive is coming through with some of the things we've experienced. So Paula said, definitely where you can grow, or how can my current skills be viewed as transferable to this new role? It's a challenge getting companies to recognize those transferable skills. And Paula, will share with you that make it obvious for them, because they won't figure it out on their own. So if you're talking about transferable skills, you're thinking about making a shift, make it obvious. Draw the correlation. I've done this, which is highly related to this or that or this other thing. Make it obvious. Draw that correlation for them.
Absolutely. Connect the dots, connect the dots, connect. It's part of why they're interviewing you. If you're sitting there and they say, well, do you have this? Yes. You're not going to do as well as a candidate who says, not only do I have this, look how it can help you with this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. So you want to be aware and advocate for yourself. This is the other thing we're not taught to do in society. Heaven forbid you should advocate for yourself. If you don't, who do you think is going to? When you do, it's like this. It's a little bit like walking into a doctor's office and saying, I've got a terrible pain in my side. Can you help? And the doctor says, yeah, I think that probably could be appendicitis. Maybe we can sort that out and you'll feel good in 3 or 4 days' time. And you walk into the next doctor and you say, I've got this pain. And he says, appendicitis. Okay, I know what we need to do. Let's book you in here. We'll have this done here. This is what you're going to feel. I know I'm not going to the first guy. You want to reassure them. They're looking to be reassured as much as you're looking to gain a position.
Mm-hmm. They need that correlation, and they need relevance. Our brains love to see patterns, and we have to help them see that pattern. Right? Yeah. So anybody else have any questions or anything about what they might be struggling with, or something that they feel is holding them back? Please do share it in the comments or in the chat. We'll be happy to answer those questions and walk you through that, and hopefully get you to a point where you can resolve that's going on right now. So Judy, what other top tips do you have for those people who might be struggling with now what we know is pioneer syndrome? Right. And what can pioneers look for? What are those stumbling blocks that they might run across that just get them right back in that fear place?
The biggest one, of course, is mindset, which comes from self-talk, so it looks like this, just sort of the anatomy of what we do to ourselves, right? So we have an event. The event creates a reaction. The reaction creates thoughts, feelings, and actions in us. Those thoughts, feelings, and actions, we then look to keep shoring up. See, I told you I wasn't good enough. See, I knew it's just showing me again. So we keep using that, and we keep reinforcing who we actually aren't, but then we call it the truth. And it's not the truth, it's just your truth. And you can change that truth anytime you want to. And I think this is the biggest point that we miss when we're stuck. You're never stuck. You've got yourself into a box that's too small for you, which is great news, because it means you're ready for a bigger box. So tips for that are, when did I get stuck? How did I get stuck? How does that sit in my body? What does it stop me from doing in my work? When I first ever had that happen to me, what did I tell myself about that?
Mm.
How have I made that the truth? And then what's going to happen if I don't make that the truth anymore? What happens if I begin to tell myself a very different story? I was sitting saying to somebody the other day, we look at Marvel and Disney World and Pandora and all of these gorgeous alternate worlds. Words matter. Pay attention to the words you're telling yourself. Words literally create worlds. And if you look at Pandora and Marvel and all of those, they have very specific words they use in their universe. And they're doing it for a reason. Some are to take you down, but the other are power words that are unique to every one of us that you can use to elevate yourself. So what you want to become super aware of is, as an imposter, what am I telling myself that makes me the imposter? If I want to be the pioneer, which I actually am, and I know that I can do it, what words will give me the fire in my belly that will keep me going? What words, what things that I see? We actually tune into movies and things to watch for that because we know it's important. So what are the ones that are specific for you? And how do things show up in your life, and how do they change as you're changing? When I moved across to the US from South Africa, we used to pick up pennies because we moved across with virtually nothing. It was clothes on our back, out we moved. And pennies were a way of being able to say, I'm not broke. So we had pennies. And it also said, in God we trust. So we had something to trust in. Then after my father was killed, every time I spoke or I was at an event, still there would be a penny somewhere on the floor. And that was saying, you're supported. You're supported. Who's making me mean that? Me. Now I look at pennies and I go, you're showing the way, you're shining beacons of hope. So I've actually swung my entire story from we had barely anything to look at what this has brought. So you want to pay attention to the words, the language, the actions that keep showing up for you over and over, because they're actually your clues to what wants to stop and what needs to start. So really pay attention. You had a beautiful one that we worked with, which we won't go into now, but it turned out that the flavor of it in one aspect became something potent in another aspect. And when you went back and looked at it, was totally relevant. Every single one of us has those pieces in our lives. So look your hidden treasure. It often masquerades as junk.
I love that. Look for your hidden treasure. It often masquerades as junk. Yeah. That's great. I like that. Yeah. So what is that junk that we're telling ourselves? And we're rarely ever our own best friend.
And what is that junk trying to tell us? Not just what are we telling ourselves, what is it saying? If you looked at me this way, I could become something very different.
Right. Right. How can that story be more powerful? So Ritu asked, what books or resources do we have to read about Pioneer Syndrome, what we now know as Pioneer Syndrome? Is there something or a website we can go to learn more about?
You want to go to my website for that piece. There is a piece on Pioneer Syndrome there. The book, I'm afraid you have to wait for because I'm busy writing it at the moment. It debuts next year. Yes. It started off as a real, I've got to get this done, and has morphed into something quite different. But if you want to learn more about who you are, the emerging you, I would say Joe Dispenza is one of the ones that I go to. When I'm not standing on this side of the podium and I need a recharge, I think that's often where I go to. He talks a lot about the neuroscience, and this work that I do is as much epigenetics and neuroscience as it is systemic work. It's literally about looking at what is my pattern, where did it come from, what was the event that started it, who carries it, how did I borrow it from them, what parts did I inherit, how am I transforming it? And that's very neuroscience. Yes. The epigenetics piece, of course, is something very hard or impactful smacks onto the system hard enough that it supersedes just the person it hits. It keeps echoing down through the system. And you can demonstrate that. They've done that several times with 9/11, with the potato famine, the Dutch potato famine, where they demonstrate the physical effect of the decisions we've made. And of course, the physical effect of the decisions we will make. So you also see this work being used a lot to undo harmful physical effects, harmful emotional effects, harmful limiting effects. And then the other piece that I would say, if you're just looking at for yourself, is to look at the do's and do nots, the bandwidths in your own family system. Because once you understand those, you'll see what has you stuck and what's asking to grow. And they're usually pretty similar. If you're looking for books on constellations work, you might try Joy Manne. She's Manne. She does a piece on that. And Fields of Connection by a gentleman, I'm going to say his name and then spell it, Jan Jacob Stam. And he is JanJacob Stam. And he does a bit about the fields of connection and how we connect in corporate life. Because, of course, something super important, by the way, about imposters. You as a leader or you at work began somewhere. It began at home. The kind of person you show up to at work is either in collusion with your family system or reaction to your family system. And you want to become aware which it is, because that will show you where you are on your journey. If you're quiet like everyone else, is that going to always work for you? If you're really loud because everybody at home is so quiet, whose voices aren't being heard and how are they asking to be heard through you? So when the sages tell you you've got everything you need to crack the code, you literally do. It sits in your language and it sits in your family system. And the work that I do, I said to Erin, is you get ancestry.com. That shows you where you belong. This work is ancestry.com 2.0. It shows you how and why that matters. It's all there and it's waiting for you.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to know how the pandemic and how it affects the epigenetics and how we move forward and what happens to these systems, because it is impactful. It is impacting. And I try to caution people throughout this time to remember your own power and not to feel hopeless or helpless. That's right. Very important, not only from a neuroscience standpoint, because then your limbic brain says, oh, this is trauma. We should write this permanently into your system. And you don't want that.
No.
Because it is a big deal and it's permanent.
What you're actually asking to do is exactly the opposite. In these times, or at any time that's, I don't know if we can even say pandemic-like, because this is big, but anything that's a crisis for you in the moment, what we do is we go into that reactive phase and we start writing all sorts of things and we start encoding it. The wise question is, in this moment, what is asking to emerge and grow through me now? If you can sit with that, if you can look at everything that's pushed you to this point and feels hopeless and look at what could be on the other side of it, you're starting to migrate from stuck to pioneer.
Yes. And that's very, very important, not only to move through it and be more empowered, but also to avoid some of the negative aspects of trauma and how it can last in the brain, the subconscious, and drive decisions in a negative way, and empower, false beliefs instead of empowering beliefs and structures. So it's just.
I love that word. I love that word that you use, that trauma word. I don't use it. I now use significant event purely because when it's trauma, we think we must use it to go small, to punish ourselves, and to suffer. And so a trauma can become something that we say, I'll never get over. I hope you never do get over it, but at least use the not getting over it to grow that incredible self that is what's wanting to emerge from the trauma.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's best not to go there. If you can, it's best to move through it and into empowerment, like you just said. What is
you mean, in other words, not to encode it in?
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And
In fact,
you don't want to encode that and write that into a script.
No. The minute you're doing it, ask yourself, stop. What is it that I'm needing to learn right now? You don't have to learn the whole piece right then, but something, when you're in the middle of a trauma, something powerful is asking to emerge through you. It is actually a gift. You need to spot the gift.
Yes. Fortunately or unfortunately, humans do not learn or transform very easily without a major catalyst.
Yep. Yep.
I was just fortunate that my catalyst was fairly major, but soft in comparison in my career, because it was just a negative performance review. That's the best thing ever happened to me. Was a negative performance. It really was. It was, bad event at the time, or so I thought, but it was the best thing that ever happened. And it was a whole catalyst.
And you learn to go looking. It's something if I had a torch that I was running around with, I would keep saying to people, don't ever think of this as a takedown. This is exactly what you've described. It's a light up. This moment is trying to get your attention. It's been trying to get your attention for a while. It is finally going to pay attention. And when you do, you're going to find something incredible on the other side.
That's right. You just have to pay attention to those moments. Even if they're super uncomfortable, they make you want to cry, throw things, scream, or run away. So, pay attention to those moments, because oftentimes they are a gift for something that can be transformational for us. So, Judy, it's been a huge pleasure having you on the show.
It's been a great deal of fun, and I hope that people have gotten something out of it.
Yes, and if you are watching this later, watching the replay later, please do pop your comments or questions in the chat. We will answer them. We'll get back to you, so we will see them. And always, it's been a pleasure having all of you tuning in to the Career Coffee Chat show. Thank you all for your comments, your questions, your insights, your engagement. I love having you on the show, and I'm very excited for a better year that's in front of us and all the fun we're going to have together. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the Career Coffee Chat show. And Sharon, thank you. Yes, I'm glad she says it's been really interesting. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that. It has been exciting, and it really has. I mean, I know that my work with Judy last week, I've been doing some personal work. It's been, I'm at a loss for words, because it's truly unraveled a lot of things that I've been struggling with. I just felt stuck, like I couldn't get past this thing. And now it is unraveled from my system. I'm rewriting, I'm reweaving that system personally for me. And it's been an amazing journey personally. So I'm glad that you've all gotten so much out of our chat today. And again, thank you so much. Until next time, ta-ta for now.